Headlines flash a new front line in the North American trade war. President Trump, using the threat of massive tariffs, tries to force Canada to tear down the walls of its protected dairy industry. But in Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney delivers a bold and calculated rebuff, refusing to sacrifice a system that has defined Canadian agriculture for half a century. The result is a high-stakes stalemate, derailing Washington's ambitions and leaving American dairy farms in a state of turmoil. How did a fight over milk and cheese become a brutal battle for economic sovereignty? For decades, the US-Canada agricultural relationship was a model of stability, a multi-billion-dollar partnership that fed both nations. American corn flowed north to feed Canadian livestock, while Canadian meat and produce flowed south. It was a deeply integrated system that provided consumers with variety and affordability. But beneath this surface of harmony, one sector has always been the exception, the third rail of Canadian politics and a constant source of American frustration: dairy. Since the 1970s, Canada's dairy industry has been protected by a fortress called supply management. It's a complex system designed to ensure stable prices and predictable incomes for Canadian farmers by tightly controlling domestic production and imposing massive tariffs, often over 200%, on imports that exceed a small pre-approved quota. While other trade barriers fell under free trade agreements, supply management remained untouchable, a non-negotiable pillar of Canada's economic sovereignty and a symbol of its cultural resistance to total North American integration. For American dairy farmers, overflowing with milk and desperate for new markets, this protected system just across the border has been a source of simmering resentment for 50 years. In February 2025, President Trump decided that 50 years of simmering resentment was enough. He launched his most aggressive assault yet on the Canadian system, but his strategy was not a surgical strike. It was a declaration of total economic war. The administration unleashed a sweeping 25% tariff on nearly all Canadian goods, a move designed to create overwhelming leverage. The logic was simple. By inflicting enough pain across Canada's entire economy, Trump could finally force Ottawa to make concessions on the one issue he coveted most: dairy. The US dairy industry had long complained that even with the market access granted under the USMCA trade deal, Canada was gaming the system. They argued that Canada's method of allocating import rights, its tariff rate quotas, or TRQs, was designed to favor Canadian processors over American retail products, effectively shutting them out of the most lucrative parts of the market. The White House was tired of the slow, legalistic grind of the official dispute process. After a win for the US in 2022 was followed by a frustrating loss in 2023, the administration felt it needed a bigger weapon. In June 2025, while it did formally request a third dispute panel, its real strategy was the tariff sledgehammer. However, this brute force approach immediately set off alarm bells within the US dairy industry itself. Major groups like the US Dairy Export Council and the National Milk Producers Federation issued public warnings, urging a more targeted approach. They feared that a broadside tariff war would backfire, disrupting other supply chains, inviting retaliation, and ultimately hurting American farmers more than it helped. It was a plea for strategic precision, but it was a plea that the White House, hungry for a decisive political victory, chose to ignore. But in Ottawa, President Trump's shock and awe tactics were met not with panic, but with a wall of calculated defiance. Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, understood that this was not just a fight about cheese. It was a battle over a core principle of Canadian economic sovereignty. His government's position was absolute. The supply management system itself was the red line. It was not up for negotiation. To sacrifice it would be to betray a half-century-old promise to the nation's farmers and to surrender to American bullying. But Carney's rebuff was not a simple no. It was a sophisticated, multi-layered defense that used the very tools of the trade agreement against the White House. Canada's strategy was to comply with the letter of the law, but not an inch more. Armed with favorable rulings from the past, Canada argued that its system was fully compliant with the USMCA. It weaponized transparency, publishing reams of data on how its import quotas were used to counter American claims of unfairness. Then, in a brilliant strategic move in July 2025, Canada resolved a similar dairy dispute with New Zealand under a different trade pact, the CPTPP. The key was in the details. The resolution involved minor, technical adjustments to how quotas were administered, but it left the core of the supply management system completely untouched. It was a powerful, deliberate signal sent directly to Washington. This is how we solve problems. We will make small, good faith adjustments at the margins, but we will not allow you to break the system. It was a masterclass in de-escalation and defiance, a rebuff that was all the more powerful for its calm, legalistic precision. This bold rebuff completely derailed Trump's strategy. His tariff sledgehammer, designed to force a quick political surrender, was now useless on the dairy file. Canada had refused to link the two issues. The broad trade war would continue to inflict collateral damage, but it had failed to achieve its primary objective. The fight over dairy was now forced back into the one place Trump wanted to avoid: the slow, painstaking, technical, and evidence-based process of the USMCA dispute panel. It was a battleground of legal briefs and data points, not political rallies. And it was a battleground where Canada, armed with its transparent data and its recent legal victories, was perfectly prepared to fight. The push for a quick knockout had failed, resulting in a protracted stalemate. For a dairy farmer in Wisconsin, the fight in Washington and Ottawa isn't a geopolitical chess match. It's a source of profound turmoil that threatens their family's future. This farmer's entire business is built on a razor's edge. Their profitability depends on the volatile price of milk, the rising cost of feed and fuel, and access to markets. Canada is not just another customer, it's the customer. In the first quarter of 2025, a staggering 36.5% of Wisconsin's agricultural exports went to Canada, with dairy sales up 23% from the year before. That's not a market, it's a lifeline. The stalemate over market access creates crippling uncertainty. Will the next shipment be held up? Will a Canadian processor cut its order? This instability makes it impossible to plan, to invest, or to feel secure. But the pain is coming from both directions. As the farmers' own industry group, the National Farmers Union, has warned, Trump's broad 25% tariff is a boomerang. The cost of a new piece of farm machinery imported from Canada, or a critical part needed for a repair, just went up by 25%. The very tariff that was supposed to help him is now squeezing his already tight margins from the other side. This is the turmoil. His access to his most important market is threatened, while his own government is simultaneously driving up his cost of doing business. He feels caught in the crossfire of a poorly aimed weapon, a victim of a strategy that is inflicting pain but failing to achieve its objective. On the Canadian side of the border, the mood on the dairy farm is entirely different. For this farmer in Quebec, Prime Minister Carney's defiance is a source of immense pride and relief. The supply management system is working exactly as designed. It is shielding them from the price volatility that plagues their American counterparts and guaranteeing a stable income that allows them to support their family and invest in their farm. For them, this isn't protectionism. It's a promise that has been kept for 50 years, a system that values the family farm over the fluctuations of the global market. They see their government stand not as a trade barrier, but as a defense of their way of life. But this victory is not free. While the dairy farmer is protected, the owner of a small construction company in Ontario is paying the price. To fight back against Trump's tariffs, Canada was forced to impose its own retaliatory duties. Now, the new American-made excavator this contractor needs to expand their business is 25% more expensive. This is the shared cost of Canada's defiance. Holding the line on dairy requires a national effort, and the economic pain is distributed across other sectors of the economy. The contractor, the manufacturer, the consumer, they are all paying a little bit more to protect the integrity of the nation's food sovereignty. The dairy farmers' stability is being paid for, in part, by the contractor's uncertainty. A president's brute force push for a political win has been derailed by a prime minister's sophisticated defense of a 50-year-old promise. The result is a bitter stalemate that has left American dairy farms in turmoil, while the rest of the Canadian economy pays the price for its government's defiance. The world's most integrated trading partnership is now fractured over a carton of milk, with both sides bearing the high cost of a battle where there are no clear winners. In the race to define the future, will North America win together, or will both nations lose by trying to go it alone? Are you American or Canadian? Share your story and your perspective in the comments below.